Pictures that make you nervous. But it's something that's important to point out, right? I know that everyone gets nervous when we talk about George Soros, but it seems there's been a little bit of a shake-up going on with his Open Society Foundation. George Soros is making changes at his foundation while he still can. The result is a painful restructuring to focus on the fight against rising authoritarianism around the world. What fucking gaslighting. Absolutely right. George Soros is an authoritarian. He uses his money, power, and influence to set up the outcome of elections, like, and basically obliterate anything that is not far left rhetoric. Right? He uses power, influence, and coercion. Basically, hires lots of little foot soldiers around the world and funds them to use them to coerce away anything that is not far left. George Soros, by definition, is an authoritarian. The absolute gaslighting. The mass email that went out to Open Society Foundation's grant recipients in the United States in March began with an upbeat note about how resistance is translating into real progress. The bad news was buried further down. The left-leaning foundation, left-leaning, I think it's a little bit more than leaning, started by the billionaire investor George Soros, and today the second largest private charitable foundation in the United States, was beginning a transformation as officials there refer to their restructuring plan. So the email said the nature of many partnerships will shift. What that actually meant in practice only became clear amid a flurry of phone calls between concerned non-profit leaders and foundation staff in the days that followed. Many of the non-profit groups that relied on support from Open Society were getting what were called tie-off grants, a final year or so of funding to ease the blow of getting cut off. The foundation set aside an enormous $400 million for what amounted to severance payments to organisations around the world, and more than 150 foundation employees took buyouts as part of the restructuring. Buyouts? I thought it was a charity. Grant recipients in public health said they were stunned to be told during a global pandemic that they would be losing funding. Others supporting refugees were similarly surprised given the worldwide needs of the refugee population and the fact that Mr. Soros himself was a refugee from communism. Well, isn't that interesting? Isn't that ironic? For years, Mr. Soros watched the world march in fits and start towards the vision of open, pluralistic democracy that he has embraced influencing since he was a young Hungarian Holocaust survivor studying philosophy. The changes at the Open Society Foundations are a painful but necessary adjustment, its leaders say, because that march has halted. Now, with its founder in his 90s, the foundation and the world confronts rising authoritarianism and deeply divided civil societies. Man, I wonder what billionaire contributed towards that. In the United States, that means that Mr. Soros' work on progressive causes has made him a target of right-wing conspiracy theories. It's also made him a target of a lot of valid criticism because he has used his power, money, and influence to obliterate anything on the right, anything and everything, even basic bitch normal conservatism. You know, the opinions that the average right winger in the street has. George Soros has used his power, money, and influence to try and get rid of all of that. Basically, if it's not far left, he will not. If it's not a case he doesn't want it, he will use his money and power to make sure that it's not even allowed. And in 2018, in his native Hungary, Open Society was forced to close its office under intense pressure from the government of Prime Minister Viktor Orban, a one-time recipient of a grant from the group. Man, I wonder why Viktor Orban did that. Maybe it's something that you should all Google and figure out why. I'm just saying. From a high water mark in the early 2000s, we've really seen a recession of democracy and human rights. Yes, true, especially when it comes to speech, something that George Soros has contributed towards. Mark Malloch Brown, the president of the foundation, said in an interview, "We've been a little bit peacetime generals, at a time where actually we're in a war again." The announced funding changes set off months of recrimination and criticism within the sprawling Open Society Foundations, a patchwork of separately constituted national organisations, regional offices around the world, and thematic programmes based chiefly in New York. Those tensions erupted at an all-staff meeting in early May when some Open Society employees demanded to know why staff had not been more closely consulted and accused the Foundation's leadership of gaslighting them. And I agree, it seems that the Foundation does that quite a bit. Several argued that the changes did not address internal problems with racism and sexism that the organization needed to deal with. Oh my god! And I thought that that is what the society existed to deal with, but it happened in the society itself. Oh, oh, terrible! It's almost like they're guilty of the very thing they accuse us of. Lurking in the background of every discussion is the fact that Mr. Soros just celebrated his 91st birthday. He is a year older than Warren Buffett, who recently stepped down as a trustee of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. The sprawling foundation Mr. Soros has funded for decades wants to refocus while he can still weigh in on the question that many large philanthropies face, which is how to keep the vision of the founder alive after he or she is gone. I would say don't. I would say don't, because George Soros is an authoritarian. He wants mass government control. He wants surveillance. He wants certain opinions and ideas and ideologies stamped out. And not even harmful ideologies, basic bitch ideologies. And the reason he doesn't like them is because they don't line up with his. He feels threatened by them. And so he's using all of his power to get rid of them. And is that the type of man that you want to trust? Mr. Soros declined through a spokesman to be interviewed for this article. Mr. Malik Brown, 67, the group's new president and a veteran of the United Nations, the World Bank, and the United Kingdom's Foreign Office, is steering the organisation through the transition period. In its early days, the foundation was much better at adding things than closing things. That was the luxury of what then now remains a very generously funded foundation, Mr. Malik Brown said. We'd lost that more strategic purpose and sharp edge of, hey, the stuff we really care about is under assault all around the world, and we just need to get a lot more strategic about addressing it and confronting it. Some staff members, including many associates with the Employees Union in the United States, have come to view the changes as not just about Mr. Soros' priorities, but also those of outside consultants with a more homogenous vision for what has always been a uniquely complex institution. They described the corporate-style streamlining recommended by the Bridgespan Group, the Bain & Company non-profit spin-off. The revamping included little input from people working directly with grantees, employees said. Looks like a lot of people are getting laid off, and that's a shame. That is a shame. On Thursday, more than 150 employees, nearly 1 in 10 at the foundation worldwide, saw their buyouts go into effect, and some were already cleaning out their desks. Why not consult those closest to the work on the front line about what the transformation should look like, said Ramsey Babooder Mata, a program administrative specialist at Open Society Foundations, who is among those leaving. I feel like a small group of leaders making top-down decisions without meaningfully... It feels like a small group of leaders making top-down decisions without meaningfully engaging the staff. Yeah, that's called big government. That's the thing that Soros wants to establish. The government, the men that sit at the nice big fancy golden round table, get to make all the decisions, and we can all just go fuck ourselves. We have no say in it whatsoever. And that's his plan. That's what George Soros wants. As long as it's his ideology that's sitting around the big round table. I mean, if the right wing are sitting around a big golden round table, then it's a travesty, it's awful, this is fascism, this is authoritarianism. But when it's left wingers sitting around the table doing the exact same thing, oh, then it's fine, then it's good. Yeah, this is what I wanted. The Legal Action Centre, which works on criminal justice and drug policy reform and receives $350,000 a year from the foundation, about 5% of the centre's overall budget, got its tie-off in July. It's very hard to find that funding in areas that we work in because there's so few philanthropies that support it, said Paul N. Samuels, the centre's president. Like many groups funded by the foundation, the centre and Mr. Samuels remain in limbo, hoping that when the restructuring is over, they will begin to receive grants again. Losing one of the pillars of the philanthropic world's support would really be a major loss, which we're very hopeful will not happen, he said in an interview. Those hopes may not be in vain. Some grantees will be picked up again by other parts of the organisation when the restructuring is complete. Indeed, the foundation said it expected to spend more on public health and on refugees this year than last. A spokeswoman added that it was able to evacuate 270 of the group's Afghan employees and their families in recent weeks. But Mr. Samuels and others acknowledge that the very nature of relying on funding from foundations is uncertain, and the advance notice and tie-off grants ease the process significantly. And this goes on, like, this is a huge article, and I don't want to go through the entire thing. But I just thought it was absolute nonsense that apparently the Open Society is fighting against authoritarianism. It's not, it's trying to establish it. That's what it tries to do. It tries to destroy the opinions, ideas, deplatformings, bannings, all the thing, like influencing elections, influencing what laws get passed, so many different things to make sure that they have complete ideological supremacy and no one can question it. Because if you do, you're a racist, Nazi, fascist, bigot, buzzwords, buzzwords, buzzwords. Yeah. Basically, I hope the Open Society completely fucking shuts down because they are authoritarian bastards. And as for fighting authoritarianism, you're not. Stop trying to gaslight everyone.